Good morning and welcome back. My name is Akesh Gupta and I'm with Lightspeed Solutions. Today in this presentation, we will review the folder structure and the files which are generated by RSP Designer from a Visual Studio perspective. So to begin with, let's look at a very simple RSP generated application, which is just sharing here customers and employees from a standard Southwind database. When we open this project in a Visual Studio, this is roughly how it looks. We have the name of the application, which is security in this case. We have an app code folder where all the code behind for all the record controls, table controls, the data access layer, business layer resides. In our app theme folder, we have our design theme, which relates to images and CSS for the design theme. The base classes really does not have anything here. The second important thing, or the other important thing, is the bin folder, which contains our base classes.dll, which is the compiled version of the base classes project, which is available in RSP Designer. 99.9% of the times we do not need to modify the base classes, but if for any reason we are extending the base classes, once the base class is extended, the appropriate DLL has to be copied back. Then based on which tables and views you have picked for your project, RSP generates a folder for every single table. As you can see, we have a table for customers, we have a table for employees, and within this folder for each table, we have individual files. These are the RSP pages that you have designed and developed. For every single page that you have designed in RSP Designer, we have an output, which is an ASPX page. We have also a page code behind file. Apologize for that. And in addition, you will also see an XML file. Please note that these XML files, even though are not used by Visual Studio, they are very, very important because they are used by RSP Designer to read the information back and regenerate the ASPX as well as the code files. So for every single table or a view, we will have a separate folder. Then we have an Fck Editor, which contains all the code for my Fck Editor in case you're using it. Header and footer contains the ASCX controls for my header and footer controls. So this way, in case you want to extend them, you can easily go to RSP Designer and you can extend it there, or you can come and write some custom code in Visual Studio. The images folder contains all the images based on the theme, in addition to some of the images which may be in the theme folder. The language is to select one language or the multiple languages. It contains one of the standard pages, which is a set language page. The master page is where you define your master pages, and it basically has all the master pages right here. Menu panel is for menu controls. It basically contains your ASCX control for the menu. Then we have the report folder, which contains our standard shared files, which are used for all the export options. In case you have enabled security, then there will be a security folder, which will contain your sign in and sign out pages. The shared folder, which is shown here, contains all the common controls like paginations, buttons, export functions, menus, and so on, menu items I meant. And this way, in case you want to change something to a pagination control or a menu item, this is basically the place where you will be changing. In addition, you have a temp folder to store any temporary files, especially if you are doing any kind of import functionality. RSP has to take the file, put it in the temp folder, and then read from the temp folder and process it. That's why temp folder is very, very important. And in case you need to deploy it in production, make sure the anonymous user account has enough permissions to the temp folder to allow the import functionality to work. And troubleshooting folder, of course, is used for our troubleshooting pages. In addition, you have some JavaScript files, which are the application web form, which basically means it's the file which is available to every single web page. So in case you are trying to write any custom JavaScript which you want to be able to access on every single page in RSP Designer application, you can definitely put them in the webform.js file. The web UI validation is entirely focused on all the validation rules and logics. Compile application RSP are used by RSP Designer. They are not used by Visual Studio. And of course, we have the global ASAX file where you can write some custom code whenever any session is instantiated, or the application starts and application ends if you want to do some things code-wise at that level. And of course, our webconfig file, which controls all the settings. So if you are moving this application from one machine to the other machine, or one database to the other database, you will definitely be making changes to the web configuration file. I would like to also share here in depth a little bit more on the app code. Within app code, you will see a business layer. Within app code, you will see a data access layer. And within app code, you will see the shared folder. Now, these three folders have somewhat more detail, which I would like to discuss here. The business layer is where, in case you are trying to write a code to treat a record or a table in terms of its functionality, you can use the business layer to extend the code. So for example, in case you would like to write a common validation code, custom records doc for customer record.vb is the place to go. Of course, as you folks can see, for each table we have a record file and we have a table file, and in addition we have one which is prefixed with base. Just like section 1 and section 2 on a page, anything that's prefixed with base, please do not make any manual changes, because if you do so, it will get overwritten during the next generation. So in business layer, you can easily write a common code which relates to an entity or a table rather than a page. Then in data access layer is where the system has the definition as well as the code to execute stored procedures. Very rarely have folks been required to extend data access layer, and so far from our experience, RSP stored procedure which are generated are very well in their functionality. The other important thing to think about here is the shared folder under app code, which contains your base application page. Now, base application page is where all the RSP pages inherit them from. So any change you make to a base application page could be good in case you want to implement that code at every single page, but it could be pretty tricky if you don't know how to write the code in base application page. So some of the things like application wide page security, rather than writing the code on every single page, RSP code customization wizards are smart enough to automatically place the code at appropriate file. So I hope that you enjoyed getting a pretty quick glimpse of the application folder structure on what RSP generates. And I do recommend you folks watching other videos from other MVPs, as this will only enhance your knowledge. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Thanks a lot.